Hi, welcome back to another monthly reading recap. We are going to be getting into all the books that I read during March 2024. It is currently the 1st of April, so I'm actually on track and getting this video uploaded way sooner than I normally would, so yay me for being a bit more organized. March was a good reading month. I read 8 books. So these are the 8 books that I read. So without further ado, let's go through every single book and I will give you a little bit of my thoughts and my rating and whether I would recommend the book or not. The first book I read is actually part of a trilogy, and that is the Girls of Paper and Fire trilogy by, I believe this is pronounced Natasha Nyan. I'm so sorry if that pronunciation is incorrect. If it is incorrect, let me know in the comments and I will amend that. But Girls of Paper and Fire. So this is a trilogy. And this is a little bit different for me. I mean, I've read a lot of books that are into that Asian or Chinese mythology, and I absolutely love that. So I really, really loved that. This was actually a lesbian relationship in this book series, which I've read a few books like that before. A bit different for me. I am bisexual myself, however, I do tend to gravitate towards more male-female relationships in books just because that's a little bit more relatable to me as I am in a relationship with a man. However, I did find this really refreshing and I really loved the relationship dynamic in this book. So the first book is really, really good. I rated this a 4 out of 5. Book 2 in this series, and how beautiful is this cover, Girls of Storm and Shadow. Book 2 was actually my favorite book in the series, and I rated this one a 4.5 out of 5. And can we just appreciate these stunning editions? These were the Illumicrate limited editions that I managed to get a hold of. So very stunning editions. And then the third book in the series is Girls of Fate and Fury, and I just thought it was a very nice end to the series. I thought it wrapped up really well. And I really would recommend this series if you like that Asian-inspired mythology, if you like fantasy, if you want more LGBTQ representation, if you want a lesbian relationship as the main focus. Amazing. I think you'll really get along with these books, and obviously there's a lot of action and very politically heavy, so really good for that. But yeah, so overall I didn't give any of these books 5 stars, but I gave 4 for the first one, 4.5 for the second, and then 4 for the third one. And I read a book that I was seeing all over TikTok, and that is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Now, I believe that this is Ali's first book in the fantasy genre. So Ali Hazelwood books are normally just normal fiction romance books, which I haven't read any of because I am not that kind of girly. I am a fantasy girly through and through. So I haven't read any of her other books. So this is my first book by her. Obviously, it's her fantasy debut, so still quite new to it. I think she researched the lore of werewolves quite well. It's vampires and werewolves. I think that's a pretty safe option for a fantasy debut. I liked it. I didn't love it. I felt like it was a little bit predictable in certain places, and it wasn't really flushed out in the way that I feel like a fantasy book should be flushed out. It definitely felt like a romance book set in a fantasy setting. But I believe that that's what she was going for. So for what it was worth, like for the way it's written, what it's about, it's a good light read. I personally just didn't really vibe with it that much. But I gave this a 3 out of 5. Then we get to one of my favorite reads of the month. So this version of this book is also the beautiful Fairy Loot edition of this book. So this author, Danielle Jensen, I've read a few of her books before, but this is her newest fantasy book, which is A Fate Inked in Blood. And isn't this edition just so stunning? I mean, look at that. You've even got all the Viking runes sprayed on the edges. I'll see if I can. Oh my god, and wait till you see the fucking. Look at that. Is that not so stunning? That's our main 2 characters on the front. But when I saw this book, I thought fantasy and I saw Vikings. And if you know me, I loved the show Vikings, and I just really, really am into Viking lore and their religion and that kind of part of history. It's really interesting to me. So I saw that and I was like, oh, perfect fantasy book, Vikings, what not to love? And I wasn't disappointed. This was great. Slow burn, somewhat enemies. I wouldn't say enemies to lovers. I would say a little bit of a miscommunication trope in the beginning, maybe enemies to lovers, but I wouldn't really say enemies to lovers, but I would definitely say slow burn romance, which is good, and lots of action and a lot of politics, and I'm very excited to see where this series goes in the future. I believe this is going to be a trilogy, so a couple more books need to come out, but yeah, I loved this, rated it 5 out of 5. And then I read a duology. Now, I have had these 2 books sitting on my shelf for so long. I've heard so many people say that it's a great series, and for some reason, I just put it off, but I finally read these Hollow Vows. This is a very typical romantasy, that's a romance and fantasy kind of book. I can see why people say it is similar to ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I definitely do see the similarities, but I ate this book up. I loved this book. It was giving everything I love. Like, I mean, I love the ACOTAR book, so the fact that it's kind of similar was not an issue for me because I loved those books and I loved it in this book. I love that we've got a bit of a love triangle, one with dark hair, one with blonde hair. You kind of know where that's going. Political, really strong feminine main character, but I fucking ate this book up. 5 out of 5. And then the second book in this duology is These Twisted Bonds. Again, ate it up, loved it. It gave what it needed to give. It was pure romantasy at its finest, and I thought it was great, and I also gave this a 5 out of 5. And then the last book that I read in March is Defy the Night by Bridget Chimera. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I have heard a lot of good things about this. It is rated very highly on Goodreads. It is part of a trilogy, so I've only read the first book so far. I did enjoy it. There were times where I felt myself skimming a little bit. I didn't really feel this much of an emotional gravitation towards the male character. Normally in most fantasy books where there is romance, I am rooting for that main male character, like especially if they're a bit morally grey like this character is. I'm normally very much in love with the main male character. However, in this series, I just wasn't really quite getting that with Korik, the main male character. I did really enjoy the main female character. I thought she was great. I enjoyed the other characters as well. I'm unsure where this is going to go. There's another 2 books in this series. I will read them this month. I am having a little bit of a break with another book in between. I will read them. I'm unsure as if I will like them. I gave this a 3.5. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I didn't really feel that much of an emotional connection. So I'm hoping that in the second and third books, that is pulled out of me a bit more and that I actually really resonate with the characters more. So fingers crossed for that. But that is all the books that I read during the month of March. I read 8 books this month, which is that's pretty good for me. Like normally 6 is my average, so 8 was really good. I'm keen for the month of April and hopefully I read many more amazing books this month. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.